Okay, this is week 4, and we're working through Chapter 4, um, which is Geography of Languages. This is the last chapter before your first exam that will be in next week. So, language. I guess language is kind of the symbols and the way we communicate. And I just thought this was an important thing to put up there. Um, so when language is defined as kind of an agreed upon system of communication, and it's really the essence of our culture. Language holds all of our technology, our customs, our beliefs. It expresses our emotion. It is considered to have a very strong tie to our place and our location. And when you walk up to somebody, one of the most significant cultural traits that you can identify someone or place them in a certain group is the language that they use. Even if it's an accented language, you can kind of know where their origins are. And so with language, it also indicates how we diffuse innovations and can contain information about our environment. So if I go through some ideas of language differentiation, the word pop, in some places it's called soda, in some places it's called Coke. This would be considered a dialect. So if I were in North Carolina and I wanted a diet Sprite, I would still say I wanted a Coke. So Coke is kind of the generic term for a soda. I didn't hear pop till I got to Oregon. In some places, baby coach is also called a stroller or a buggy. How about a hoagie? Yeah, in the West it's called a sub. In New York, a sub sandwich is a hoagie. Hotcakes, there's another one. Pancake. Apple pandowdy might be a specific type of hot cake, and there's a song that I won't sing that goes with apple pandowdy. Flapjacks is another word that's used to talk about a hot cake. How about pavement, sidewalk, and another dialectic word, y'all, means you plural, y'all, and I've even heard people say all y'all. So we're talking about the difference between dialects versus accents. So this idea that a dialect, it's still English, but there's a set of words or a structure, a tone, a speed that's used in a certain region, and you can understand somebody who says Coke or pop or y'all. And that's a little different than an accent. An accent is the different pronunciation of a word. So you say potato and I say potato, or chocolate and chocolate. I can't say chocolate like they would in the East, but you get the idea. Peach and or what is it? Iced tea here and iced tea in the South. So there you go. Pigeon, however, is been used incorrectly. Often people talk about pidgin language, but pidgin really is a vocabulary that's been comprised from several languages for the purposes of trade. So in Louisiana and that part of the country, there developed a language that was a pidgin language that borrowed pieces from several different language. When a pidgin language becomes a speaker's original tongue and it becomes codified, then that's called a Creole language. Here's another communication sign. Languages can be divided for understanding into different categories. So there's a language family. So look at this in the textbooks. It talks about different language family. English is part of the Indo-European language family, but we're also English is part of a subfamily called the Germanic subfamily, and the language that I speak is English. Spanish would be part of the Indo-European language family. The subfamily would be Romance languages, and Spanish would be one of the languages. Languages cannot be mutually understood, and that's the difference between that separates one language from the other. I can understand some Spanish words because there's enough cognates that are similar. I can understand some French, but generally I can't understand them completely, and that's the difference. That's what differentiates languages. So we can look at formal regions. So here are formal language regions, and you can see that the language families are what is being mapped. And so this brown Indo-European language family is probably the widest spread language family in the current world. And it is the borders are, again, core periphery. The borders are not hard and fast. Just because I'm standing on the southern side of that, what is that pink color? It doesn't even have this color for English. Anyway, from the Indo-European up to this, I don't think it's Armenian. Anyway, oh, American Indian, sorry. So on either side of that line, I'm not going to have only 100% American Indian speakers or only 100% English speakers, but the closer I go to the center of each of those regions, the more I'm going to see those speakers. So the families that I want you to know are the Indo-European family and the Austronesian family. There's some important traits in all of those, as well as the Sino-Tibetan family. The Sino-Tibetan family has the largest number of speakers, while Indo-European is the most widely diffused. These language lines or formal regions are created by a process of drawing isoglosses, or iso means line of equal value. So an isogloss is lines that are drawn on a map where people speak the same word. So if you look at the red line on this map, it separates the region of this area where they say night or where they say knit, or what is that? Spam a lot, the knights who go neat. I don't think that's what they're talking about. The blue line separates people who would say lang instead of long. And so you can draw isoglosses. So make sure you read about isoglosses on the map. And here is a map showing dialects in the U.S., and they are drawn by isoglosses. So you have a southern dialect, a northern dialect, and this kind of middle, and then there's a Hoosier apex. But all of these were drawn by the process of isoglosses. The book also has an example of this family tree or language tree, and there's a belief that all languages came from one original mother language called Nostratic, and Indo-European is just one tree on the giant tree trunk, and you can see that the different language subfamilies: Romance, Germanic, Slavic, Baltic, Indic, and Greek. And of those, then each of the different languages are on the tree branch. So it's a nice visual for looking at how languages are subdivided and divided. Another I don't know if these are real or if these are photoshopped, but I thought they were kind of funny. So when you look at the chapter, try to look at Indo-European and get an understanding of what are the highlights of the Indo-European language. Half the world speaks an Indo-European language. It has English is the second largest language number of speakers. And you can see Sino-Tibetan is the second largest language family, and the others are much smaller in comparison. Make sure you understand the diffusion of Indo-European languages and English in particular. So talking about the origins of the language, and then how the language is diffused to an area, and then how they combined to create what we now know as English. Again, Sino-Tibetan, a quarter of the world's population speaks one of the Sino-Tibetan languages, with Mandarin being the largest. There was a great story in the paper or on the radio the other day about, I think it was a small community, I think Macon, Georgia, perhaps, where they're teaching students Mandarin. It is now a required language in the school system. The African languages, Niger-Congo is kind of the division of north-south, Niger-Congo A, Niger-Congo B. So there's this whole group of languages in Africa with a north-south split, and the Afro-Asiatic languages being part of that northern desert Islamic area of the world. And not all signs are mutually understandable. The other thing to look about or to study is the diffusion of the Austronesian language. Make sure you understand why this diffusion is so spectacular. The book talks about the distance that it traveled and the way that the origins of the language and how it's no longer there. So make sure you look at that. And again, know the origins or the cultural hearth of the major language areas and their diffusion, seeing how Austroasiatic starts in the Asian Peninsula and yet is no longer spoken there, and that's pretty phenomenal. And then the movement of Indo-European north and east, or northwest and east, and then why, be able to discuss why Afro-Asiatic languages stop where they do and they don't move down into the Niger-Congo area. We can also look at the book talks about language refuges or refugias, and these are areas where there are remnant languages or languages that are protected because of physical boundaries. And so there is the Basque language between in the Iberian or between Spain and France, and then the languages in the Native American languages, the Navajo languages, which are isolated languages. Another term to know is lingua franca. Lingua franca is a language that's been agreed upon for trade and for academic reasons, and I think English is probably considered the internet. Lingua franca, I think the majority of people, speak. I think there are 366 million English users on the internet. It's by far the highest usage. It's also the global language for trade and commerce. The lingua franca in Africa is Swahili. So there are so many languages in Africa that there's an agreed upon language to speak Swahili. So kids often learn both languages, whatever their native language is, and Swahili. The book talks about the benefits of multilingual states. There's some examples of how governments deal with codifying more than one language. The United States really struggles with that. We want movements to have English be the only language. So kind of go through that, the benefits to multilingual states and how governments deal with that. I'm going to scoot over that. And then there are countries that have monolingual states, such as Iceland and France. It's against the law to put signs in other languages. And I'm going to skip that and move down to toponyms. Toponyms are prefixes and suffixes that give an indication of the history of a place. So, for instance, Stan means place, Berg means fort, and Ville means village or town. And then talking about remnants of toponyms. And then finally, toponyms can reflect events like Battle Creek or people, Mount Washington, or physical landscapes. Such as Oakland, California, meaning the oak grape or the oak tree. So we're going to work with language in your activity this week and look at toponyms on some Google Maps. And then the last thing is the idea of preserving language. So trying to understand why language is important, why we try to save language, and would it be horrible if we didn't save languages?